Hey, welcome everybody. On today's show, are Midjourney and Leonardo on the chopping block? Is the Chinese AI revolution maybe a little bigger than we initially thought? Has saturation and fatigue of some of the largest AI apps finally set in? We have the fourth edition of the Andreessen Horowitz Top 100 Gen AI consumer apps. And what we're going to be doing is comparing the results from the third edition, which just happened 6 months ago. So, which AI is rising? Which AI tools are falling? We're about to find out as we get into this conversation. Today is March 24, 2025. This is the Daily AI Show. We come to you live every single weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern. And joining me today are Beth, Junmi, Andy, and I am Brian. And yeah, guys, I'm excited to dive into this and look at the comparisons of what we saw just 6 months ago in their third edition in August of 2023 versus what we're seeing in March of 2024. There's some really big insights here for sure. So I think what we'll do first is let's just pull up the report because anybody can go read this. Carl just joined us as well. Welcome, Carl. Here we go. So let's just pull up the report first. And you can get to that by going to a16z.com, and then you can see the well, you can't see it, it's cut off at the top, but anyway, if you just search for the top 100 Gen I consumer apps, that's what you're looking for. Just make sure you see that it says fourth edition down here and it's not third edition, which looks like this one. So you can get this one as well. And then once you get in these reports, we did a whole show, by the way, about the third edition. Essentially at the top, you're going to get these two graphics. One is the top 50 Gen AI web products, and the bottom one is the top 50 Gen AI mobile apps. And so we did a whole conversation about that. But now that it's 6 months later, we have a whole new set. And you might be thinking, or maybe you don't because it's AI and everything changes all the time. You might be thinking, wow, 6 months, that's not really that long. Well, you'd be shocked to see that like I think in one of these two, I'd have to go look at my notes for it. I think like 20 out of the 50 have either dropped off the list completely, not just shifted down, are gone. And then others have obviously replaced it. And so one of the things we'll be talking about today and getting into it is DeepSeek, which on both charts here in second place from not being on it at all. And also DeepSeek on the mobile in 14, again, not even existing 6 months ago, but they're not the only story. There's a lot of them here. So before we get into all of that, I just wanted to show before we get into the conversation, what they kind of do in this report. They do a really good job with it. They talk about like what's on the brink. So some things like Runway and Otter and Lovable, which I thought was interesting on the website. And then we have things like Polybuzz, Pixverse, which sounds like image or video, it looks like by this thing, Umax, Snap Edit, so on and so forth. Those are on the verge as far as being the top 50 for mobile. And then we get some great graphics here about the growth of ChatGPT, its growth on mobile. That obviously does a big report on DeepSeek because they came out of nowhere, as we all know, in December. And they talk about mobile engagement, so on and so forth. What I really like at the bottom, I'm kind of quickly, because there's a lot of great stuff in here, is they actually have the links. And I don't know if they had this. I guess I could go look. But one of the things we were clicking around and doing is, between the five of us, we didn't know a lot of these names, or I would say like 20% of these names when we did this a couple months ago. We were like, I've never heard of that company. I've never heard of that company. What are they doing? How are they in the top 50? And we talked about character.ai and how big they were and things like that. But what I like in this fourth edition is that there is a link to every single one of these tools. So you can go find out more about it. And maybe that was in there. I guess I could look. But for me, I feel like I had it like we were always typing in and being like, whatever, I'll pick one. Eden.ai, and then trying to figure out what Eden.ai is. So they've made it really, really easy now in the fourth edition to not only learn a lot, but there's a lot more data that we're going to get into, right? That didn't really get into the report that I thought was really, really interesting. So let me pause there because I did a lot of intro, but let's kick it over to you guys. Outside of DeepSeek, unless you want to talk about that first, was there any big like, ooh, whoa, I didn't see that coming type of thing when you looked at this most recent fourth edition?
Yes, I will say that one of the things that I have a question about is the absence of Gemini and Microsoft's Bing or whatever that is in the web products. And I wonder if that's because of the naming convention, right? Because Gemini is actually a google.com thing. So when you go to Gemini, because it makes it on the mobile app. And I don't think more people are using Gemini on mobile than web. Like it seemed like like, okay, if some of these other things are making the list, you're not going to convince me that more people are using these things than are using Gemini. I mean,
I think that's a good call out. I didn't even honestly, it didn't even occur to me, Beth. So that's a huge call out because you're right. I think there's obviously, especially right now, we have a show coming up. What is it? Friday? We have a
It's
show
Friday.
talking about Gemini, among other things. But especially with all the stuff they've released in the last 6 months, their last 6 months has been strong at Google. So yeah, it would seem odd that you wouldn't see them on the web. That's a huge call out.
So that was my main takeaway.
Who else? What else did you guys see on these when you're comparing them?
Well, actually, I want to expand upon the Gemini observation a little bit. I think that's because there really isn't a landing page for Gemini Web, right? For the mobile, it's built in. It's the assistant. They push you to upgrade your assistant to Gemini. So as a mobile app, that that's something that can be easily reached. But until very recently, Gemini was either in a lab or is in their AI studio or is a component that's integrated in other applications, but not a landing page, not like a ChatGPT that you go to. So I don't know if that's a pushback or whatnot, but I think that might explain that. Why I don't really see it on the list at all, that gives me a little more pause. But if it's based on unique monthly visits, these are websites that regular people just go to and use the application, then that might be the reason why we don't see it on this list, even though it's technically integrated into every Google workspace now, and things like that. And then on the web or for the mobile, it's a mobile app on every Android device. And I think it's in a few more days where it's going to be a force upgrade from Google Assistant to Gemini as your assistant. That means it'll be on every Google Android device.
Yeah, you make an excellent point. And in the top 50 list for mobile apps, the number 3 is Microsoft Edge, which I think means Gemini, right? It's called Microsoft Edge here, but that's the browser that is Gemini powered, if I'm not mistaken.
No, Microsoft Edge is Bing and that power side of it. Google would be the Gemini side, right?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of. I was like, kind of just.
Wait, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry to confuse everyone, but what I mean by that is, you don't see. Beth opened up with, okay, where's Gemini? Where's Copilot?
Mm-hmm.
Well, number 3 mobile app is Microsoft. So at least Copilot is showing up there on the mobile side. And so I'll correct my comment that way.
And that was my point, that people are clearly using them when you look at the mobile app thing. I believe they're using them on the web as well. It's just not showing up in the results. And to your point, like Gemini, the way that you get to Gemini's landing page is gemini.google.com. But that's a Google thing, right? Like that resolves to that. It's similar to what ChatGPT used to be, which was chat.openai.com/chat. But now that resolves, it's still where you go, actually. But now it's masked as chatgpt.com. So I'm not saying they're bigger than ChatGPT. I just thought that was interesting.
No, I agree. And I don't know if this will work on my screen. I'm just going to try really quick. I was trying to do this differently, but let me see if I can pull this up in the, I just use like a Snagit editor. And so I don't think it's going to do an infinity thing here. Let's just double check. No. Okay. It did. Okay. So the reason I wanted to do this is because quickly I wanted to show 2023 is on the top and 2024 is on the bottom. And the way you can tell is this much more bolded text is the 2024 version. And we are currently looking at just the web products. So we won't, just to show you in the green, that's going to be mobile apps. We can look at that in a second. But I know this is probably a little small on the screen, but I just wanted to pull it up because visually, and then we can look at the data here as well, because I did some ChatGPT data analysis and insights. I'll actually talk about how I did that too, because I think people forget about like how quickly you can do data analysis, even if you don't have like a table. And so one of the things that like kind of obviously points out is that, I don't know if I would have a tool here. Let me see. Shape. Yeah, let's just grab a tool like this. So like right here on the 2024, this is where we see DeepSeek coming into it. And as we can see, it's not on here before. And then things like that, I think kind of jump out to me. Poe in 14 here versus Poe in 8 over on the 6 months ago. And so, you know, that's, among other things, that's sort of a slide there. And I think that's interesting to me because actually with Poe, I think they continue to try to do a good job as far as, you know, having sort of an all-in-one tool. And so to me, that kind of breaks the analysis a little bit, because a lot of what you do see, and we'll talk about this more, is that these one-off tools are getting kind of gobbled up by a tool that can do a lot more. I think we're seeing things, funny enough, you mentioned Gemini, like these truly multimodal models that are now able to handle more are obviously taking the place or the necessity to have like a one-off. But I don't really feel like, I feel like Poe is the opposite of that. So I'm just curious if there's just more competition in the market or why we might see Poe slide down as an example. I don't mean to just highlight specifically them, but that's just one reason here. We can just look really quick and see if where we find Poe, because they do have a pretty decent app, but I'm not seeing, I'm doing a real quick spot check here, but I'm not seeing it here on there. So that was one that like kind of jumped out to me. The other big one, I'll just take these guys off really quick, are what I said at the top of the show, which are Leonardo and Midjourney sitting here at 17 and 18 6 months ago. And then if we get down to the bottom here, I know they both slid, but I got to find them really quick. Midjourney is in 33 and Leonardo, where are you, Leonardo? No, I know it's slid on here, but I'm trying to find the title. So I think this is also interesting. And one of the bigger, oh, here it is, 28. One of the bigger takeaways. So we went from 17 and 18 6 months ago, Midjourney and Leonardo sliding to 28 and 33 respectively. And so I think that's interesting to me because if you just go back, I don't know, several months, right, or even a year ago, and not to take anything away from what Midjourney is doing. I really don't use it, Beth. I know you can speak way more to this. I've gone into Leonardo several times over the last year or two, and I think they kind of keep doing great things. But I also don't go into either one of the products as much as I used to. Like I really did used to use Midjourney quite a bit more, as well as Leonardo. So I'm curious what you guys think, because they're not the only ones. I'm just highlighting them because they're two big names. But there is a slide statistically when it comes to image generation. What's probably not as surprising is there's not a slide when it comes to video generation. There's not a slide when it comes to really multimodal abilities and tools that can handle more than one thing at a time. Those are actually increasing. So is this just that people are going less and less to Leonardo and Midjourney because they can find similarly quality tools or good, and let's call them quote unquote good enough image tools somewhere else that just doesn't require them to log in somewhere differently? Or do you think there's more to this story? Because this was one of the big insights for me looking from 6 months ago to today.
I want to point something out that I think is at the sort of the meta level of this. And if you're going to do an analysis of consumer web AI products and mobile products, the thing that could fall out of that for you is, what are people doing with AI? Mm-hmm. And now let's look at the big picture. In web products, let's take the top 6. The top 6 by unique monthly visits is made up of 3 main, very familiar names that everyone knows because they're the main players in the frontier model slash, I'm adding Perplexity here, not really as a purveyor of a frontier model. While Sonar is very good, they actually deliver the frontier models through their interface and have a very different kind of search-oriented thing. So you've got ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Perplexity, and Claude. 4 out of the 6 are, I said 3 before, but it's 4 out of the 6 are these main players. And the other 2 are both platforms that allow consumer users to create a character. One of them is Character AI, and the other one is Janitor AI. So of the top 6, 2 of them, and in important places, number 3 and number 5, are these places where you go and people are in a big community creating a character and letting you interact with that character. That's a very different model than we normally think of when we're thinking about how do consumers use AI.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is interesting that like I'm always shocked by character.ai because it's just, but that just goes to show you like it's just not in my world. It's just not. But like we've seen this now. You pointed this out, Andy. Hell, you pointed this out over a year ago, and you'd be like, character AI continues to be strong, and we basically saw it not move except for DeepSeek. It didn't move in the last 6 months, which I think is a really good call out. It's a good indicator that people are definitely going to it. And we would have to look and see outside of like, I think you said janitor, but I'd be curious what other ones are in that. And it was in the report too, we could look that are here. I'm going to scroll down and just find it really quick so we can have the conversation. It's the bar chart or the, oh, that's 3. Excuse me 1 second. Here it is. Let's see. Character would be what? Companion apps? What we call them? Yeah. So that's 6% of what's on the list on there. Funny enough, though, they don't show, when I look at companion apps, character that's not in there. So character must be just considered like a conversational or something like that. I don't even see where character is.
Yeah, I'm not sure what category that is.
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't be a companion app because that's not really, you could talk to Abraham Lincoln on character app, right? That's not necessarily built.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what their definition is.
Right. That's what I'm trying to get.
I think, like you both said, it's interesting to point out, but I think for me the answer is really easy. Humans want to be humaning, right? We're social creatures. There's been a loneliness epidemic growing amongst people, at least in the United States, and particularly kids, and that's who's going here. All of the characters are, a way to communicate either with their favorite character or with some sort of facsimile or idealized, character, whether they want to fill a whatever kind of role that they're looking for. Maybe it's romantic, maybe it's informational, maybe it's just, pure entertainment. But people want to connect. And if because of the stages, I know this might be a little too heavy for Monday, but, while social media is a great way to connect people all over the place about, certain things, it's also been studied to show that there's more isolation, right? So this is one of the other side of the coin when it comes to fast technology like this. But I think it's a great indicator because character AI and janitor AI in that top 5, they're basically clones of each other. If you look at them, they're structured the same. You do the same thing. Could be the same group. Don't know. But I think it highlights a growing trend to be able to communicate with something or someone that it's safe to communicate with, in the sense that you're not going to be judged. You're not going to get repercussions for talking to them and things like that. So, there's going to be some wish fulfillment there and things like that. Now, how does that translate business wise or in the grander scheme, or what is this element that we think we can draw from that to improve other services? That just might be catching up to the awareness and the literacy. Right now, I can do a fair bet that everyone, or the vast majority of people who are using character AI and other things like that, are Gen Z, Gen Alpha. They're the ones going there, creating those characters, talking to those people, or talking to those personas and things like that. That's I'll go on a limb and say that that's it, and then followed by everybody else who's just interested in AI and things like that. But what can we extract from that and improve other apps and usage and awareness and literacy about other aspects of AI?
So that's interesting, Jimmy, because if you look then at the top 10, and to Brian's point that some of the top 10, like ChatGPT, can be more than a communication app. But if you look at the top 10, Suno is the only one of the top 10 that actually generates something based on your interaction. Like that's the thing that the interaction is. The rest are chat based, right? Like, and what I mean, like in ChatGPT, you can say, hey, generate me an image. You can use DALL-E. You can have it create a graph or a graphic or something like that. But the rest of them all look like interaction with chat interaction. And 4, as you said, character, janitor, spicy, and I think Dubao are all like interactive, not just with an AI, but with a persona-based AI that sometimes you can create, sometimes you cannot. And 4 out of the top 10, that really speaks to that point, that people want to be having conversations with other people.
Yeah. Let me weave off of that. And Brian, will you bring up that colorful chart at the bottom of A16Z's page, which is the top categories by revenue? So we've been talking about what are people doing in terms of monthly, visitors, and that's many people chatting for free. But now, if you look to the point about generating something, the largest segment of this, 20% by revenue, is photo and video editors. So people are paying. A lot of people are paying for photo and video editors, and most of the ones on there that you see, they look to me not so much like Sora or Kling or the others where you're actually generating a video, but really manipulating your own photos. I think Rimini is, for example, and I don't know this space at all, but I think they're photo enhancers and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But now let's make another point, which is if you look at this chart, about half, 45%, is made up of photo and video editors, beauty editors, and copycats of ChatGPT. And then you get to general assistants. So the big money, more money is going to ChatGPT copycats than to general assistants, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, and Quark AI assistant. I don't know what that is. But I thought that was very interesting that if you follow the money is going to some more practical applications than chat. And even the major players are not monetizing their chat particularly well.
I want to jump in and talk about the copycats, because there are a lot of our clients who, when we come in, it's like, oh, I paid for three versions of this, or I paid for this. I don't, but it doesn't work like that. And I was like, okay, what are you paying for? And a lot of them have paid for copycats.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of clients have their president or persons are like, I'm using it, but it doesn't. And then we look over their shoulder or like on their mobile device, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. And it's like, yeah, but I'm paying $100 a month. I'm like, no, I don't know what you're paying for, but you should not be paying for You're paying for this. It is kind of funny. We do see that.
And that's it. I was scrolling while you were talking because I feel like that is definitely in the report, and I was just trying to find it, the copycat part of it, and talking about if we look again, if we look top to bottom, they don't seem to have a long lifespan, but you can see why, you know, as a strategic business, people would pop one up, confuse people, make money, and then fizzle out. And there's probably businesses that's what their focus is. It's not because they think this copycat version is going to be around for 5 years. It's more like get it while the getting's good. And as soon as that changes to something like from general purpose to a Sora copycat or something like that, once we get to that point where you see more with the video generation, also in the area of text to speech, I think you'll see some copycats there where people have stood some things up and really quick, you know, like very similar type LLMs. I think we'll see it there as well. It's just that the technology, it's much, much cheaper, obviously, for them to develop a copycat chat interface than it is for them to be something that's a copycat of an 8-second video. But that won't always be the case. Eventually, those costs will come down too, and it'll make it really easy for some company to stand up a almost identical version of it, confuse the audience, do better with marketing, get that money, and then disappear again and move on to whatever the next flavor of the day is. You guys have all brought up some stuff that I think is really interesting. Number one, we haven't talked about it yet, but we certainly can. I talked about at the very top of the show, Chinese AI companies. You know, obviously DeepSeek made the news. That made a big splash. But you mentioned Duobao, assuming I'm saying that right. That one jumped from 47 to 10 on the list. And if you start breaking down other Chinese companies that you probably have never heard of, they are all rapidly moving. So this isn't just a DeepSeek conversation when we talk about Chinese AI and what a lot of these apps are able to do. I believe Kling is also Chinese, a very, very capable video creator. In fact, when Sora first came out, that was the first one I compared it against, was Kling. And in my mind, Sora could not hold a candle to Kling. Now, I've said it many times in the show. I think Google's Video FX, which is still a little bit in beta, it's available through the APIs and Enterprise and things like that. I've used it many, many times, and it's, to me, far superior than Kling, right? So there's a bit of a pecking order there, but still, they made a splash with that. I wanted to bring this up. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hailu is number 12, and they are also a generative video app. And what's interesting is that they, so we're starting to become people that that companies reach out to say that they're interested in talking to us about their product. It's not like it happens a lot, and please happen more. If you're listening to this, we're totally open to that. But they have reached out to us a bunch of times in a way that seems like that's they're making a really big push, and I think that's part of why they're at 12.
Who is at 12 again? Sorry.
Hailu, Hailuo. I don't know how you say it, but that's
I mean, we'll give it our best shot. This is some analysis I did. By the way, this is 4.5. You know, when people said like, well, everybody's been kind of like dogging on 4.5. One thing 4.5 I think does do a better job of is just how it breaks things down visually when you're in ChatGPT. And so I actually thought 4.5 did a pretty good job with this analysis. This one did make me laugh though, because it didn't get rid of it. It just corrected itself. It's like Poe improved from 8 to 14, then puts it in parentheses. Actually moved down numerically, which is a decline. Like, yeah, it belongs down here, not up here. So I just thought that while in the midst of 4.5 doing the analysis, it sort of quote unquote caught itself, but didn't remove it or move it around. It just kind of said, whoops, that's on us. It should be below, and kept on moving, which I thought was interesting. So then we have this is the moved up. We talked about Janitor. 3 to 4 isn't significant for Perplexity, but obviously they have big things coming. We already talked about Poe. We talked about Duobao. Spicy Chat. I don't know. I think that one we said is like maybe a companion. It sounds like maybe a companion app on there. Then we have the move down. 4 to 6, I wouldn't say that's significant, right? That's slight declines. We talked about Leonardo and Midjourney. I don't know what Candy.ai is, but 15 to 34 is a pretty big drop. Then you've got some image creators here. This looks like another one. ClickChamp, All these in this area that had pretty big drops all have something to do with some sort of like editing of an image or whatever. And we know that some of the bigger models are getting better at that. So it's not surprising to see that they've lost a little bit of area. So now, remember I said at the top of the show, like 20%, totally off. 22 out of 50 are new, or 22 out of 50 disappeared. Like almost half of the list is different, not just slid, gone, or appeared, right? So here's some of the new arrivals not listed in 2023. We talked obviously about DeepSeek. Kimi, I think is also maybe, I think that's also a Chinese company. I'll have to double check on that. Some other ones in here, Kling, we just talked about. Sora, which probably wasn't on the list at all, right? Yeah, new arrival. Sora wasn't around as far as being generally available. I don't know some of these other ones. Monica Cursor, obviously we know. We saw that was just on the fringe was Lovable. So we're seeing some of these. Now, this is, by the way, the numbers we're looking at are just the desktop. We're not looking at mobile yet. So we're just comparing desktop. But Lovable we saw on the mobile side, which is interesting to me because are people working on coding problems on their phone? That sounds horrible to me, but I'm sure lots of people do. I like nice big screens if I'm dealing with code because it's hard enough to read and do side-by-side comparisons of stuff. Andy, you could talk way more to that, but I thought that was interesting as well. Here are all the ones that disappeared. I thought one that was really interesting, I haven't used it, but U.com, which was a big play. I mean, there was a big talk about how much they spent to get that URL. U.com is supposed to be like if I'm not mistaken, a better Google. It's kind of in the Perplexity space, if you will, about having like better AI enhanced style Google searches. But it's dropped completely off the top 50, which I found really, really interesting. Some one-offs like Chat PDF. Sort of sad about this one, Udio, because I still think that's the better. You can keep Suno. I'll take Udio any day as far as a music creator. But that's just me, obviously, because it's clearly dropped off. But they had a big splash. And, there's a bunch else on here. Here's some of the stable ones that were not really, well, we talked about character. Hugging Face, no shock there. I'm surprised it's not actually higher, but I guess that's more for people who are on the dev side. And then I said, like I was looking at Midjourney and Sora and Kling, and it's like, yep, of course, it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right, Brian. Of course I'm right. You're actually insightful. So then it's talking about like declining apps, but the rising apps of the video side. And then I asked it like, what's the data story here? Like what's going on? And so it's suggesting that maybe there's some saturation or fatigue in just the pure image tools, which I think is plausible. And then obviously we're seeing a rising demand of video content, and that's only to get easier and easier and cheaper to do. And then strong interest in more advanced conversational tools. This one, I'm not sure, but I think what this has more to do with is like, what else are these conversational tools capable of doing? And are they pulling market share away from one-off apps? In other words, can you survive? Will Midjourney survive in the long run if what they're just exceptionally good at always is just making exceptionally good images and having a great user interface for making phenomenal AI images and consistency and things like that? Is that good enough? Will people always pay for Midjourney or Leonardo that does that? Not sure. It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Beth, you could talk more on that one. And then I talked about 11 Labs, which we haven't talked about yet, but speech to text, text to speech, video dubbing, right? Audio, voice dubbing, these kind of things. Like, it was interesting to me that 11 Labs had dropped from 12 to 22, which I found interesting because I kind of, in my mind, if you ask me, I'd say, oh, 11 Labs is still in the game. They're still putting out amazing new tools. There are competitors. And I wonder if that competition, they're not here yet, but I bet you in 6 months they will be. Sesame, Hume, some other ones that we've talked about just recently on this show that probably haven't grown fast enough yet to make this list. But I'd be really interested to see if in another 6 months, 11 Labs slides, if we see some competitors in there, or is it just that, again, the big players here are going to start gobbling up? If you can go into ChatGPT and get an 11 Labs like experience or quality of an auto dub of your voice, do you stay with 11 Labs because of the API? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I was curious about that as well. Like, what is the reason there? So let me pause there because there's a lot. And then below this, I have some of the mobile comparisons as well. But What jumped out to you guys?
Yeah, I want to talk just for a moment about the photo video generators category in this thing. I was expecting to see in photo and video generators names that, we talk about on the show. But in fact, they list as the top 4 that, in terms of adoption among consumers. Arvin, never heard of it. Momo, never heard of it. Photoleap, I think I vaguely recall hearing that name before. And then in video AI, I have heard of that one. I think I've actually played with that one before. But they, the main players on there are apparently not getting the revenue. And so by providing them free, these other video generators, and then it raises the question, is this like the ChatGPT copycats? They're just better marketers, and they've managed to get a catchment of users who are willing to pay, even though there are better free alternatives. And before I leave, I just have to do one quick product placement. This is Rancher's Milk here, just to make sure that our chat team doesn't have to worry about it anymore. This is high protein breakfast coffee that you'll find at Costco. Pick up your case of it soon.
I missed it in the chat, obviously, but clearly we had questions about Rancher's Milk in the chat in there. That's funny. What else did you guys like from the stuff that I was showing on there? Anything else that's sort of jumping out to you?
Well, I just wanted to highlight that this list is the top 100. All right. Mm-hmm. There are thousands of little versions of AI companies out there. If you want to see an AI tools list, like future tools and things like that, they'll have pages and pages of links for you to go try. So this is, if you're on the list at all, is significant. That's a significant amount of attention and traffic going to your sites. The second thing is, this is also your unique monthly visits, right? Or your unique monthly users on mobile. This is not API integrations. This is not accessing the back end. So while a lot of these make sense, in the top 10 and things like that, because they have a web interface and everybody uses them, this does not account for all of the traffic and access that's being used. What I like about these lists is it's a good indicator about consumer awareness, right, and adoption, because this shows who's using AI for the most part and entering at that consumer level. Most consumers are entering at that landing page or that direct interface. Most consumers are not building their own API access backend for their own tool most of the time. So I think this is a good indicator to see what a larger cross section of general AI use, right, and awareness and adoption amongst consumers. And so I think that's what really provides insight into where some of these companies are on the list. And so why isn't X, Y, and Z there, or X, Y, and Z is off of the list? Why did that happen? I think a lot of it just comes from the surge, right? The cycle of something coming out. And remember, these are every 6 months, right? So the general populace, mainstream, is behind what us early adopters are going to be. So seeing everything on this list is an indicator of what really happened about 6 months ago, or maybe 3 months ago. And we're seeing huge increase in traffic. Things like Hailuo and things like Kling and things like that. Those products, those services and tools are now in the mainstream. That's what, the hype cycle got everybody going into it. And over the last 6 months, that's why we're seeing a huge increase. And in 6 more months, I think you guys pointed out, we will see the increase in what we see now as things that are huge. Like Brian, you mentioned Sesame. Absolutely. that interaction layer, and as soon as a character AI can implement the Sesame open source 1B into their product, you're gonna see that skyrocket as well, right? More layers of communication, more multimodal. Soon you can type. Now you're going to be able to chat. Next, you're going to be able to see. And then beyond that, you're going to be able to take them with you. And then beyond that, you're going to have embodied AI, right? With those personalities built in. So I think that's what I really take from these lists. And I'm glad they do it every 6 months, because that's AI speed. It's probably even slow for AI speed, right? You know, every quarter we really probably should do one of these things, but every 6 months is pretty good. And a comparison of what numbers that we're seeing at the beginning of the year versus the end of the year, those are the kinds of things that I really want to take a look at to see that's growth, right? When your tool gets into the mainstream, because that's what this is really an indicator of, that's going to give you some deeper insight.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like, I thought I was looking in here in their intro as you were saying that, like, they call this their biannual report, which obviously it's every 6 months. But I thought they even had mentioned, Andreessen Horowitz, that is, had mentioned that it used to be annual. I feel like it, whatever, I don't know. I felt like they had talked about they used to do it more infrequently, and they've sped up, exactly to your point, Jimmy. And it does say, like, their first words in here this is from March 6th when this first came out. In just 6 months, the consumer AI landscape has been redrawn. That is a powerful first statement, but it's 100% true. This is their fourth installment, by the way. I tried to find their second and third, but it wasn't the same naming convention, the URL, and honestly, I didn't go beyond that. I was curious to see how much of a dramatic difference there might have been from 1 to 4, just to see, like, if any were still on the list. I mean, I think ChatGPT would probably be there, and other ones on there, but I'd be curious to see, since that would be if this is our fourth installment. 1 year ago would have been 2. So we're looking at a year and a half ago when we would have gotten the first one. It'd be interesting to see where that all shakes out, but I didn't pull that up to it. One of the things we have been talking about, is the rise of the Chinese AI platforms. And so on both sides, when I did my 4.5 analysis for the show today, on the desktop side, if you will, Duobao, Hailu AI, Monica, and Joyland, as well as DeepSeek and the other bigger ones that we're already aware of, because we talked about Kling and stuff. That's on that side. And then it also brought it up again as significant on the mobile side. Quark, Meitu, Beauty Plus, B1612. Those are also all, and Baidu AI Search, excuse me, that one's the first one. And then Duobao's mobile success further confirms this global growth trend of Chinese Asian developed platforms. So I don't think that's going away. I think in 6 months, we're just going to see an even bigger presence on both lists. And I would imagine in a lot of cases, they'll be moving. Now, will it be the same companies? I don't think so. Some will fall off, whatever. But if we look statistically at how many of those are Chinese or Asian developed AI companies, I think that's where we're going to see that trend in the next 6 months.
Well, I think that makes sense just in terms of the demographic, weight of China. As their applications for consumers become more capable, the Chinese public has no reason not to use the Chinese ones that are better at Chinese language, I'm sure, and are being used by the rest of the cohort or surrounding them. So having a population that's 3 to 4 times the size of the United States, I think, is going to make them be at the top of the list. Eventually, they're going to be the leaders. And, it'll be difficult globally for ChatGPT to overcome Baidu or others that, end up with larger adoption as the infrastructure in China extends to their full population.
100%.
Interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
I just want to point out that in the report itself, what Junmi was talking about in terms of what happened and if you could see the surge, they did that analysis just for ChatGPT, but there is a graph in there that's like, oh, look, this was the release of ChatGPT 4. We can see the line go up. This is 4.0. I don't know if anybody's doing that cross analysis, but that's a really interesting section of the report, visual.
Yeah, I just want to pull that up on screen since you were just talking about it. This is what you're referring to, correct?
Right. And it for me, like visuals are really helpful. Like this is so much more evocative of that trend or that truth than like just the paragraph describing it.
And then down here, it's like what's driving the growth. The long initial plateau stem from ChatGPT's early novelty factor. Many consumers found it intriguing, but lack compelling daily use case. However, as OpenAI has introduced more advanced models and capabilities in ChatGPT, usage has risen accordingly, both among existing users and a wave of new adopters. And then it talks about, like you said, the big spikes aligned with product milestones. 4.0, and that is obviously getting into 01 and things like that, that it's talking about release of 01 preview, initial rollout of advanced voice mode. That goes to what you just said, Jumi, which is like talking about character AI and these type of things. And I agree with you. I also think like any companies that are doing like mobile video games or video games, I'm not in that space. I don't really play video games. However, I could 100% imagine going in and doing like a first person shooter type game or something like that, where you have a now extremely competent like Sesame style interactive. And now you're a team, but your counterpart, your partner in that team, in that quest, in whatever you're doing is 100% AI. And it's able to talk to you with almost zero latency and actually be part of the game with you. So you can imagine if you're getting the games and you're getting stuck somewhere, you sort of have this slightly smarter, or depending on the model you use or whatever, this slightly smarter partner that's along for the ride with you that says, maybe we look behind the rock. Guys, the last time I probably played video games was Zelda, so don't come at me. But that's how I remember it. I used to use the 1-800 number to dial up Nintendo to ask how to get unstuck. If anybody remembers that, that's how old I am. Is I remember the 1-800 numbers for those in the magazines for Nintendo. All right, well, listen, let's wrap this up. I think, look, I can't imagine we won't talk about these reports every 6 months. They're really, really interesting, and probably even more interesting than just this snapshot, because Jumi, you kind of nailed it, is what's happening over time. So now we have 4 reports. We can go back to looking over that time. It's so easy, by the way. I said I was going to mention this. When I went into ChatGPT and I used 4.5, credit where credit's due, I just gave it the images. I did not have to convert that into text first or anything like that. This is just for anybody as we're talking about using tools. Don't forget, they're very, very good these days at looking at images and pulling text and different things out of it. All I had to do is say, here was 2023's top 50. Here are 2024's, and not 2020. You know what I mean? The 6 months and the 6 months, version 3 and version 4. And it had zero problem extracting and immediately starting to do data analysis on it and just look at, things that were moving. I was making, adjustments in the chat and saying, well, based on what you said, this is what I'm saying. And then you could see it was coming back to me. So that has nothing to do with the report. I just want to remind people, like, if you're not thinking about how to use a ChatGPT or a Claude or a Gemini like this, don't forget, you can just give it images. If you're in business and you have to look at, investor reports and stuff like that, yes, you can give it the whole PDF. Yes, you can just give it a snapshot of that image and ask really detailed questions about it. So just wanted to throw that in at the very end in case people weren't thinking about how they could do their own data analysis just using images to get started without having to really do the lengthy part of writing things down and stuff like that. All right. Going to wrap it up for today. But like I said, we'll be back. We do this Monday through Friday. So if this is the first time you're hanging out with us, thank you. Welcome. Thanks to everybody in the chat. I was always having a good time in there. And now talking about Nintendo, talking about Rancher's Milk earlier in the day and having a good time. But we'll be back, like I said, every day, weekday. We're here live at 10 a.m. Eastern. And so we have a lot of good shows coming up for you. Like I said, at the end of the week, we'll be talking specifically about Gemini and a lot of other cool AI discussions along the way. So hope you guys found this interesting, insightful. And yeah, we'll definitely talk about this again in 6 months. But until tomorrow, have a great day. See you guys.
Aloha.